Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Ruckus, that weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics tonight: cop cams, voter IDs, and how King Louie got on the ballot, plus roast and toast from the panelists. But first, our Ruckus headliner, Ronnie Burt, President and CEO of Visit KC, formerly the Convention and Visitors Association. It would seem likely that all the positive attention on Kansas City generated by the Royals' postseason activity, the American League Championship and almost the World Championship and the World Series, has generated and will continue to generate economic and public relations benefits for the area. To talk about that and much more, we welcome Ronnie Burt with Visit KC. Mr. Burt, thanks for coming by Ruckus.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
You're relatively new to Kansas City, are you not?
I am. I've been here about 4 months.
You picked a good time to come to Kansas City.
It has been an exciting time and an amazing opportunity for me to be a part of it.
And you came here from the nation's capital.
I did, Washington, D.C. It was a great opportunity and a lot of potential in the city, and I just needed to be a part of it.
We all tend to assume that the postseason success of the Kansas City Royals will lead to economic success in the Kansas City area. Is there any evidence that what has happened so far has generated positive economic impacts in the area?
Absolutely. Going back to the first wild card game when we played the Oakland A's, we have seen an enormous amount of economic benefits from hotel occupancy, obviously restaurant receipts, taxi cabs. We've just seen a lot of activity in traditional areas where we may not be tracking. I was just talking to some people, and they were saying how the nail techs that do manicures have been busy just putting the KC Royal logo on women's
blue nail polish.
Absolutely,
yes. My wife was involved in that.
So we've seen some tremendous uptick in the economic benefits.
But how do you get those estimates? How is this information derived?
Sure. Well, traditional economic impact is put together by extensive research from visitor patterns, whether the number of days they stay, what they're spending their money on, with restaurant receipts, hotels, things like that. But what we've seen here is we've seen just an expanded expenditures from apparel sales, hats, T-shirts. You look at the Rally House chain; they've been selling out of a lot of Royals apparel. Food and beverage sales have been up because there's just been an extensive postseason run. And
not just visitors, but people who live here. I assume are out buying all sorts of memorabilia because of this rather unusual event that took place in Kansas City.
Absolutely. Those have been all extreme benefits from an economic standpoint. And the one area that I think you can't miss is labor. There are people in the postseason and in the playoffs that have been getting extra hours, have been working, whether it be at the stadium, providing security, staffing at the stadiums, extra staffing brought on in the hotels as well as in the restaurants. So there's been a huge economic benefit to the area.
There was much on network television coverage of the World Series in Kansas City beyond the baseball stadium. A lot of discussion about Kansas City, a lot of shots of familiar Kansas City landmarks. Are you pleased with the way Kansas City was presented, the market was presented nationally?
Absolutely, and it's my understanding that businesses have already started doing a little bit more research into Kansas City. We were very positively displayed from a business standpoint and also from a community pride standpoint, and then also from a hospitality and tourism. Our assets were displayed, our food was displayed, so there were a lot of amenities that were showcased specifically about Kansas City. And I was saying just this morning, if America didn't know Kansas City before postseason play, they certainly know Kansas City now.
Well, now that baseball fans at least are reacquainted with Kansas City, what needs to be done to attract other people, non-fans, people who may not have followed the World Series, playoff games? What does Kansas City need to do, in your opinion, to make things more attractive?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think the postseason play and the Royals have also galvanized and maybe created some new baseball fans. I think I saw a map of the nation, and 47 out of the 50 states were all in blue going for the Royals, and I was certainly getting a lot of text messages from people all around the country. But I think what people need to see is that Kansas City is a major player on the business side. I mean, we've already hosted major events. We were in the final run for the RNC, which, that's just continual coverage. And I think what we need to do as a community is just continue this momentum and excitement and get ready for the next big thing, because because there is something coming. I don't know what it is today, but we will be there for the next
Mr.
big
Burt,
thing.
you likely know that for several years there's been a lot of talk about the need, some people perceive the need for a downtown hotel that would be a public-private partnership, 1,000 rooms. I don't know if you had time to get into all this, but do you have some thoughts about whether that's necessary?
Absolutely. I've actually been a part of several discussions about that. And I think the key thing is, one, is that there is more hotels coming to downtown. So there's already several that have broken ground and are currently being built. The most important factor for building a downtown hotel is it being the best financial deal for the city. And I know that the city is working very, very hard to progress that forward. But first, they're looking out for the interest of the city and make sure it makes sense. Will it make a difference for the city long term? Absolutely. Will it hurt the city long term? I think we have to do is just readjust our strategy if we don't get the hotel.
Is it going to happen anytime soon?
I'm very optimistic and think that we should have some positive news here soon.
Do you have any other major announcements you'd like to share with us?
No, I think that...
You wouldn't share them if you did, would you?
Well, I think that we're working, what I will say is we're working on a lot of positive things. I think that our convention business is seeing a positive uptick, and I think that in the news we'll hear some very good things happening with the city soon.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing them, and thank you very much for coming by. It was a pleasure to meet you,
Great,
sir.
thank you.
That is Ronnie Burt, President and CEO of Visit KC. Now let's meet the Rockettes and start a ruckus. Steve Rose is a Johnson County civic leader and columnist with the Kansas City Star. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Kansas City Urban League. Patrick McInerney is a former state and local prosecutor and is now in private practice with Denton's. And Winnie Kozad is president of the Kozad Company, a government relations firm. Well, it would certainly defy logic to have Steve Rose on the panel and not discuss Johnson County and Kansas politics. So let logic prevail. Less than 1 week from Election Day, local and national focus remains on the race for the U.S. Senate, where incumbent Pat Roberts is facing a strong challenge from independent Greg Orman. We'll talk about that in the race for governor, but let's start local in Johnson County, where Ed Eilert, the incumbent county commission chair, is facing opposition from Patricia Leitner, a former state rep. They appeared with Nick Haynes on Kansas City Week in Review, where much of the debate centered on the county's acquisition of the King Louie bowling alley.
We purchased the building for a little less than $2 million and for less than $15 million, less than the original cost of building a new facility. We will have space for the Historic Museum. We will have space for the election office, not only for training, but for advanced voting.
To correct Mr. Eilert just a little bit here, when that building was purchased, the whole idea was to put in this Museum of Suburbia, and all of that has fallen to the wayside. So they switched gears, and he's going to find ways to expand government and put more things in there when this wasn't needed when the building was purchased. There was no definitive plan. That's why it has sat there for 3 years.
So, Steve, is King Louie on the ballot along with Ms. Leitner and Mr. Eilert?
Yes, but I don't think a lot of people are getting up in the morning and worrying about King Louie. I think they're looking at the county, whether or not the leadership is there, whether it's been prudently run, and whether the quality of life in Johnson County is continuing to be excellent, which it is, and it's got the AAA rating in the bonds, and it's a solid community with a flaw, and that's King Louie. I think it was a mistake to buy King Louie. But I don't think that's an earth-shattering event in the overall context.
Now, Ms. Leitner told Nick Haynes that everybody she talked to asked about it and complained about it.
I think that there's a recognition that the building was bought and maybe it shouldn't have been bought. End of story. But when you put that in the context of everything that Ed Eilert has done, and I could list them off, it would take too long, but the leadership that he's exhibited, and don't forget, a majority of the commissioners approved the King Louie bowling. He didn't do it by himself. It took a majority of the commissioners. Now a majority of the commissioners are in favor of not doing anything with
In your
King Louie.
Kansas City Star column, you sort of supported Pat Roberts for re-election to the U.S. Senate and opposed Governor Sam Brownback's re-election. What's the rationale quickly for each of those?
Well, the rationale for Roberts is simply that I want to see a Republican Senate, and I think that we're not going to get that with Greg Orman. In the case of Brownback, it's simply this. If you believe that these tax slashing events are going to result in a dramatic improvement in the economy of Kansas, then Brownback's your guy. If you believe, like I do, that this tax slashing is going to lead to humongous deficits and draconian cuts in the things that are important to people like education, then Brownback's not your guy, and Davis is.
All right, Woody, quick thoughts about the Brownback race and about the Roberts race.
Well, I think one of our younger, newer, and apparently brighter Ruckettes said on here around Labor Day that he thought Davis had essentially gotten all the anti-Brownback vote, and where did he go from here? And I don't think he's answered that question. I think Brownback's going to win this thing by a few points. A couple of weeks ago, I thought Brownback would win bigger than Roberts. Right now, I think, and this is nothing but my viscera, not any numbers I've seen, I think Roberts will win by a slightly bigger margin than Brownback will, but I think they'll both win.
Pat, what are your thoughts about these Kansas races?
Well, it's brought a ton of national attention to Kansas, and it's really laid bare what Pat Roberts has done and what Pat Roberts hasn't done. I mean, have you ever seen a Republican senator in Kansas scrambling the way Pat Roberts does for the last 2 weeks? He's got, all the predictable cast of characters showing up in Kansas. He's running the predictable ads, and I think, quite frankly, he's in big trouble. I expect Greg Orman to come away from that probably a couple points up.
Would you say, Gwen, that Pat Roberts' biggest problem has been Dr. Milton Wolfe, who ran against him in the primary, and the Tea Party that supported Dr. Milton Wolfe? It was Wolfe who exposed all these problems, allegedly, about not living in the state and not being conservative enough.
Well, Wolfe may have exposed the problems, but his biggest problem is Orman, who's running a great campaign and who's speaking a message that the electorate wants to hear. He's talking about getting to Washington and actually trying to get something done. And being an independent makes him really strong in this equation, because right now, frankly, the electorate is not happy with either party because of the stalemate on Capitol Hill. And I think that's the bigger challenge that Roberts has, is that he's a part of that, and that Orman is making it really clear that he wants to be progressive and get the job done.
Wrap it up, Steve. If Orman wins, does that start a revolution of some sort in Kansas in terms of electoral politics?
Well, of course, we haven't had anything but Republican senators since 1932 in Kansas, and I don't think it's going to change now. I think Roberts is going to win. I think Brownback's going to win, and I think Chris Kobach's going to win. So I'm sticking my neck out.
Trifecta.
And I think it'll be a Republican sweep, even though the polls don't necessarily show it at this time.
Somebody once said the muscle memory of Republicans in Kansas will be to pull the lever or fill in the circle, whatever you have to do to vote for a Republican. It's part of your heritage. Well, you can't have an election without voters, and these days you can't have an election without allegations of voter fraud and or voter suppression, depending on which party you're listening to. Republicans generally say they're worried that non-citizens are voting illegally and that requiring an ID card to prove who you are will solve that problem. Democrats generally claim that voter ID laws are unfair and tailored by Republicans to keep blacks and other minorities from voting. These voters generally favor Democrats. Now, a few days ago, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a petition to stop the Texas voter ID law from taking effect just ahead of Tuesday's elections. So should we now think the Supreme Court supports voter suppression? Gwen?
You know, the Supreme Court is a conservative-leaning court. I will say that. But you know what I think is really important in this context is that the voter suppression laws are unwarranted at this point. I mean, the voter ID laws are unwarranted.
Well, you think they're one and the same, don't you?
Yes, they are. I think they are one and the same. And let's talk about the reason for that. Okay, the primary purpose for the voter ID law, from my perspective, from looking at the Republican Party, is to really contract or to suppress the vote, because the Obama campaign, his 2 presidential elections, expanded the electorate. And when that expansion took place, it brought forward a more democratic or liberal voter, African Americans, Latinos, older people. So if you couldn't find anything else, let's say we have voter fraud issues. I can't find any evidence of voter fraud. I went searching for it, and we've had this conversation before. There's no material evidence of voter fraud. But what's at stake here is you have states like Texas and Georgia, where you see an expanding of people, a growth of minority populations that are voting, and that's not good for the Republican Party.
But Woody, how does it disenfranchise people to show up and present an ID card, which they have to do in many locations to buy things or just to be admitted somewhere?
Well, I came 2 days ago. I was prepared to talk about voter ID laws and say both sides exaggerate the effects, that there's not significant vote fraud affecting elections, that the Republicans howl about, and that it doesn't suppress the vote the way the Democrats say, because it doesn't. You can get a voter ID, isn't that hard. But the fact is that the Cooperative Congressional Election Study done by Harvard, published by Harvard, was the numbers from it, and the National Science Foundation funds it in part. A couple of professors from Old Dominion looked at it. Their conclusion is that in 2008 elections, 6.4% of non-citizens, not just illegal immigrants, non-citizens in America cast a ballot. Every one of those is a fraudulent vote. And it amounts, on a very small c conservative reckoning, to something pushing 400,000 votes nationwide. Al Franken won in that election by 312 votes. Using that same math, if there are 6,100 non-citizens living in Minnesota at that time, he won that election with fraudulent votes and cast the vote that made Obamacare possible.
Pat, are you
It does matter.
Pat, are you worried about voter suppression and voter ID laws?
So, full disclosure here, I'm working for the Missouri State Democratic Party next Tuesday to protect people's right to vote. So with that said, let's talk about what the Supreme Court decision out of Texas was and what it wasn't. It was a non-opinion decision by the Supreme Court not to intervene in the election rules in Texas, 10, 14 days ahead of the election. And courts all across the country are loath to do that. So it's not a decision on the merits. The district court that took a look at that wrote a 146-page opinion saying the purpose of that law was to discriminate, in part because, listen to this, acceptable IDs in Texas under that statute are gun licenses and military ID. Unacceptable ID is student ID from an in-state
How about driver's
Texas
license?
Driver's license is acceptable. But what we know is that there are statutes and there are tactics that are designed to suppress the vote. This is statutory suppression because the impact, and nobody will argue with you, the impact disproportionately falls on African Americans, Hispanics, and other minorities.
Who tend to vote
Right.
Democratic, as I said in the introduction.
Personally, I don't have any problem with people having to produce a driver's license or an ID at the voting booth. But this idea of registering to vote and you have to have a birth certificate or a passport, I think is a major burden on people who are disadvantaged. And, for Secretary of State Chris Kobach to say, well, all they have to do is sit on their couch, this is what he has said, take a photo of their birth certificate and on their smartphone and email it in. He said, that's just an easy 1, 2, 3 thing to do. And I don't understand why everybody can't do it. Well, a lot of people can't do it. And there are thousands of people in the state of Kansas who want to vote who cannot get registered to vote because of the hassle. And as I said, I have no problem with you showing up to vote.
We got to move on, but is it that hard to get a birth certificate?
It can be.
It
You
can
call
be.
a county courthouse?
It's not
If you're
that
one of the
simple.
6.4% of non-citizens, it's impossible
If
to
you
do it.
currently live in that county,
and
it may
it's a
be
serious
simple. It's
problem.
not that simple.
And it doesn't get at the fraud that really happens.
No,
It
he's
does not
wrong.
get to fraud where it happens.
All right, in the age of the selfie, where smartphone owners photograph themselves doing all sorts of stuff or doing nothing, the desire to record almost everything is reaching law enforcement. The shooting in Ferguson, Missouri revived the argument over the need for police body cameras. They're already in use by some departments and under study in Kansas City, Missouri. As with most every public policy question, there is broad debate. And it's only coincidental that we raise this issue when one of our panelists happens to be the former president of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Board. So, Patrick, what do you think about body cams for police?
I think first they're coming, and I think everybody will tell you that. The conversation that you're seeing right now is the same conversation that took place 10 years ago about dash cams. There are big differences, one of which are privacy concerns, and not just cops, but victims, confidential informants. And it's a whole different deal because a car can't drive into a home, but a camera can walk into a home. You've got a whole different set of issues. What we're lucky to have here is a police board and a police department that has an outstanding professional development and research bureau at this department. and they are well equipped. And in fact, they are underway right now because the police board approved $50,000 in funding just this week. They're underway at taking a look at all of these issues because there's not a comprehensive set of standards about when and where they should be used.
I'm sure you've looked at this issue and studied the pros and cons. What are a couple of the cons? What are the reasons not to have body cams?
Well, I mean, there are privacy concerns. And I think
whose privacy?
Citizens, police officers, anybody they come in contact with. And I think you'll hear from police officers too. What they don't want that process hijacked to do is impose discipline. They don't want these cameras to be management's way of taking a look at what they do every second of their day, and that's legitimate. So when we talk about balancing benefits and balancing harms, it really has to come down to...
Woody wants to know why that's unfair.
Yeah, I want to know why. It's happening to people in private business all over the place. They were looking at where their cell phone's ringing from and what they're doing all day. If it's good enough for them, maybe it's good enough for the police. I don't want to sound naive, and I don't, I yield to Pat's superior knowledge of this subject, but I don't understand off the bat why this isn't good for everybody, at least in the accusation of police misconduct arena. If you got a privacy issue, I think you amend the state statute and say this is not a public record unless there's an allegation of police misconduct, at which case the privacy concern of the purported victim is waived by him when he makes the complaint.
It's a very good thing, and I think everybody will tell you, it protects cops as much as it protects anybody else.
Well, what do officers think about it, by and large? Any idea?
The experience here in Kansas City is that with dash cams, complaints go down because illegitimate complaints that consume a lot of investigative time and a lot of administrative time don't get lodged when people are advised we've got a dash cam and we'll take a look at it. In fact, we'll show it to you.
We have a local example right here. The Johnson County Sheriff's Department, the city of Merriam, the city of Lenexa have had body cams for years, and they have found them to be extraordinarily effective and have cut not only way down but almost eliminated complaints of police abuse. People behave differently when they know they're being filmed.
You're right.
And furthermore, they can prove that there wasn't any kind of abuse. This is coming 5 years from now. Probably every police department in this country is going to have video cams on their chest.
I think the key though is policy. It has to be part of a well-developed, well-thought-out policy. And again, we're really well equipped in Kansas City, particularly with the partnership between KCPD and UMKC's criminalistics department. So I'm looking forward to that.
So Gwen, if we have these cop cams and then at a crucial time the video blurs for some reason, technical problem, you'll see that as a conspiracy.
I'm not even going to respond.
Well,
I could see how
it will legitimately raise questions if
there's a technical problem and suddenly it's like the 18-minute gap with Nixon and the Watergate tapes.
But a legitimate question.
But it's on the way, right? Well, I mean, do you support the idea
Absolutely.
too?
I think it's important. I think it promotes transparency in law enforcement. It's really critical at this time when data show that, especially in the African American community, for African American men, they're 21 times more likely to be the victim of police use of force.
All right.
So this keeps it clear.
It is time now for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes offer a high five or a low blow to people and events making news. And we start tonight, as requested, with Gwen.
As requested.
You asked me last week.
I have a toast to the Royals and the fans of Kansas City for a great baseball season, especially starting with the wild card game throughout the World Series. The Royals captivated the imagination of this nation, reinvigorated my passion for small ball, which is really exciting baseball, and put so much attention on Kansas City that I don't see any reason why any Kansas City fan or Royals baseball player should be hanging their heads today because we didn't win the World Series last night. We got to the party. We'll get there again next year. Go Royals.
Go Royals. Now, my toast is to David Catania, the independent candidate for mayor of Washington, D.C. Why should we care? Well, David was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Yes, he's a militant homosexual and a left-winger, but he is also smart and honest, and that's unheard of in the city government of Washington, D.C. And it's a dramatic contrast to his opponent. And it'll be a great thing for Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, which should concern all of us, if he is elected as the first non-Democrat mayor in the city's history. And it might just happen. It's a long shot, but it might happen.
Well, Gwen stole my toast, but I will say this. I was old enough to remember the 5th game of the World Series in 1956 when Don Larson pitched his perfect game. And I will tell you that what Madison Bumgarner did in this series is equal to that and will probably go down in history as one of the greatest pitching feats of all time. So we have to toast, whether we like it or not, Madison Bumgarner.
And I'm going to key off what Steve said because I think that speaks to how well the Royals did. It took a performance, an historic performance by Bumgarner to stop us, and we were 90 feet away. I've got a roast. I have to ask the voters in Kansas how long they will continue to employ a Secretary of State who engages in the conduct he's engaged in and who does so on their dime and gets beat every single time.
And finally, my toast goes to Senator Tom Coburn, who is responsible for the publication of this year's Waste Book, a listing of some of the federal government's most egregious expenditures. On the list, $800,000 to make a video game featuring parents and children arguing about food, $856,000 to study mountain lions running on treadmills, and finally, $117,000 to study how monkeys gamble. Tarzan's chimp applied for the study but was rejected because he's known as a cheetah. And that is Ruckus for this week. Back next Thursday at 7 with the home team, Gwen, Mary, Yale, and Woody, to analyze Tuesday's elections. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes, Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.